They stole my trash cans, not knocked them over, not moved them, not left a nasty note about placement. No, stole. As in took them, vanished them, gone like a magician's rabbit, and I know exactly who did it. Denise Templeton, the HOA queen of our little suburban corner of hell. She walks around this neighborhood like she owns the deeds to our souls, tan clipboard in hand, lips permanently pursed like she just smelled something foul. Probably her own attitude. My name's Travis Fenmore. I'm just a guy who wants to mow his lawn on Saturdays, grill during football season, and not be harassed for existing. But that's apparently too much to ask for when Denise and her little HOA goons think they're running the Pentagon instead of a cul-de-sac in central Missouri. It all started 3 weeks ago when I got a notice taped to my door. Not mailed, taped. Trash cans must be returned to side of house by 10:00 a.m. Monday. Violation will result in fine. It was taped crooked, by the way. I know that sounds petty, but if you're gonna threaten someone with a fine, at least line up the tape. Now here's the thing, I work nights at the hospital. I don't get home until around 9:30 on Monday mornings. Sometimes I forget to roll the cans back right away, but I do it before noon always. I've lived in this house for 7 years. Never once had an issue until Denise got elected president of the HOA. I ignored the first note, figured it was a warning shot. But then, the second Monday, trash cans gone, both of them. They were there when I left for work Sunday night. By the time I got home Monday morning, they'd evaporated. I looked around the street. No wind could have carried them off. They weren't in the ditch or down the block, and I know my neighbors wouldn't steal them except maybe that one guy who mows his lawn in dress shoes. But even he wouldn't want my beat-up bins, so I walked down to the HOA office, which is just Denise's converted garage, and I demanded answers. "Travis," she said, without looking up from her clipboard, "you left your trash cans out past the allowed time." "We removed them." "You what?" "They're property of the HOA once regulations are violated. It's in the covenant." "The covenant?" I blinked. "This isn't a secret society, Denise. You can't just steal my bins." "We didn't steal them." "You forfeited them." She said this like she was confiscating contraband in a prison. I looked over at the corner of her garage. My trash cans. Spray painted with my house number, sitting right there like a couple of kidnapped hostages. "I want them back. Then submit a request in writing and the board will review it at the next monthly meeting. That's in 4 weeks. That's right." She smiled, finally looking up. "And if you choose to escalate instead of following procedure, I'll have to fine you again." I stared at her. That smug face, the clipboard, the power trip. I felt my blood pressure spike. I left without another word. I wasn't going to stand there and argue with a woman who probably laminated her grocery lists. Instead, I went to the hardware store and bought 2 new trash cans. Not because I gave up, but because I had a plan. Denise had a habit of walking around the neighborhood every Tuesday morning. Clipboard in one hand, phone in the other, pretending to be on calls with the regional compliance director, which I'm 99% sure doesn't exist. That gave me exactly 7 days to prepare. First, I installed a new security camera on my porch, then one on the garage. Motion-activated, high resolution. I wanted every frame. Second, I called the city's sanitation department and confirmed what I already guessed. The HOA has no legal authority to confiscate trash cans. None. In fact, the bins technically belong to the city as part of our municipal waste contract, so Denise had committed theft, felony. Nah. But enough to make things very, very uncomfortable for her. But that wasn't enough for me. See, I believe in justice, but I also believe in a well-timed middle finger. So late Monday night, I did what any reasonable man would do. I went through every trash bag in my house, pulled out the smelliest, sloppiest, most disgusting garbage I could find. Old meat trays, half-eaten takeout, coffee grounds, even some of my daughter's diaper leftovers from the week before. I packed it all into separate bags, and then at precisely 3:00 a.m., I made the rounds. The HOA mailboxes are lined up in clusters. Denise's was the special one. Hers had a gold-painted flag on it. Of course it did. I opened it, stuffed in one full bag of week-old tuna salad trash, and gently closed the lid. Then I did the same to every other board member's box, 4 in total. I didn't touch anyone else's. just the ones who sat on that little throne of neighborhood tyranny with her. By sunrise, the street smelled like a landfill. And when Denise opened her mailbox that morning, I was sitting on my porch, sipping coffee, camera rolling. She screamed. It was a high-pitched, horror movie kind of scream, like she'd just discovered a body. She staggered backward, hand over her mouth, and started gagging. I waved at her. She marched straight to my house, red-faced and furious. "You think this is funny?" she shouted, jabbing a finger at me. "Very," I said. "Also, I have you on camera admitting to stealing city property. Want me to email that to the police or the local paper? You vandalized federal mailboxes." "Nope, didn't damage them, just left a gift. You're going to jail for this. Cool. Let's see who gets there first." She stormed off, and I could see her dialing frantically. Probably calling the police, or maybe one of her little HOA disciples, didn't matter, because I already had a meeting scheduled with the City Code Enforcement Office. And I had something Denise didn't, proof that the HOA was operating way outside its limits. Proof that the board was misusing its authority. And now, proof that they were stealing property and retaliating against homeowners who didn't fall in line. I had more than enough to burn their little operation to the ground, and I was just getting started. By the time I parked outside the City Code Enforcement building, I'd already compiled everything onto a flash drive. Date-stamped video footage, audio from my doorbell cam, a copy of our municipal sanitation contract proving city ownership of the bins. Even a highlighted screenshot from the HOA's own handbook, which, by the way, never once mentions trash can confiscation. The code enforcement officer, a guy named Morales, met me in a cramped office that looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint since the early 2000s. He had the kind of energy that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else but was too responsible to act on it. I dropped the flash drive onto his desk. "You're going to want to see this." He rubbed his eyes like he expected a long afternoon. "Okay, walk me through it." I did. From the first warning note to the trash can disappearance, to the footage of Denise openly admitting to taking them, to the city's own sanitation guidelines. When the video of Denise's mailbox meltdown started playing, Morales leaned forward, eyebrows raised. "You put trash in her mailbox." I did. But it wasn't vandalism, didn't alter the boxes, didn't damage federal property, just stinky garbage in a container, not a crime. He paused the video. "You understand how bad this looks for her, right? I'm counting on it." He tapped at his keyboard for a moment, then looked at me. "If what you're saying checks out, that HOA's operating beyond its authority, confiscating city property is a violation. If they've done it more than once, we're talking about a pattern of misconduct. Want to guess how many other neighbors have had trash cans go missing in the last 2 months?" He didn't answer, just started jotting notes. "Leave the drive. I'll call you if I need anything else," he said. I left his office with a copy of the incident report and a number for the city attorney's office. That was step 1. Step 2. Talk to the neighbors. Not just any neighbors, the ones who'd been hit with random fines, vague violations, or had property repossessed by the HOA in broad daylight. I'd never paid much attention to the gossip circles before, but they were more organized than I expected. I started with Mr. Lai, 3 houses down, whose garden gnome collection had mysteriously vanished last month. He answered the door in a bathrobe and slippers, holding a half-eaten apple. "She took your trash cans?" he asked. "Yep, you ever get your gnomes back?" He sighed and motioned toward the side yard. "Found them dumped in the creek behind the tennis court, faces smashed in. HOA blamed vandalism. You report it. They said it wasn't their responsibility. Said I shouldn't have had unauthorized lawn ornaments to begin with." I asked if he'd be willing to talk to city investigators. He didn't even hesitate. Next up was Maria, retired nurse, lived on the corner. She'd gotten fined twice in 1 month for excessively bright porch lighting, even though she kept a 75-watt bulb in a downward-facing fixture. "I switched it to a lower wattage," she said, "and they still issued a second violation. Claimed it disrupted the visual harmony of the street. She had photos, dozens of them, documenting every change she made, timestamps and all. I asked if she still had the original letters. She went inside and returned with a manila folder an inch thick. They're not just power hungry, she said. They're coordinated. They target people who don't show up to meetings or challenge their authority. I thanked her, then added her name to the growing list. By the end of the week, I had statements from 8 homeowners. Everything from unauthorized landscaping fees to a forced repainting of a garage door that clashed with the aesthetic color palette of the neighborhood. Every statement was notarized and cross-referenced with HOA meeting minutes, which I pulled from their own website archive before they realized anyone was paying attention. I took the whole file to the city attorney's office. This time, I met with a woman named Halloran, sharp-suited and sharper-eyed. She read through the documents without a word, flipping pages like she was speed reading for a bar exam. When she finished, she leaned back. You realize you've just built a civil case against your HOA, right? That was the idea. She steepled her fingers. There's also a potential criminal element here. If they're seizing property without legal cause, issuing fraudulent fines, and using those funds for non-disclosed activities. That's embezzlement. I didn't say a word. Just let that hang in the air. I'll forward this to the county prosecutor. In the meantime, you might want to talk to your neighbors about calling a special election. You get enough signatures, you can force a board vote and replace the leadership. How many signatures? 25% of homeowners, more if your bylaws are restrictive. I nodded. I'll get them. Over the next 4 days, I knocked on every door in the neighborhood. I skipped the known loyalists, the ones who kept their lawns trimmed with measuring tape and attended HOA meetings like they were church services. But everyone else, they were more than ready. Some had been waiting for someone to stand up. Others just wanted their fines refunded. One woman, a single mom named Kendra, said she'd been reported for excessive driveway usage because her teenage son practiced basketball after school. Denise told me it disrupted neighborhood tranquility, she said. Like it's a monastery or something. By the end of the week, I had 37 signatures, more than enough. We drafted a petition and filed it with the HOA's management company, which, surprise, surprise, was run by Denise's cousin. But once the paperwork was in, they couldn't stall it. The bylaws were clear. A special election had to be held within 21 days. That's when the retaliation started. 2 nights after filing the petition, someone slashed my mailbox open. Not subtle, not quiet. They used a crowbar and left it dangling like a broken jaw. I reported it to the police. Not even 5 hours later, my car tires were punctured. I installed a 3rd camera facing the street. The next morning, it caught someone in a hoodie spray painting the word liar across my garage door at 3:42 a.m. I handed the footage over to Officer Patel, the same guy who took my trash can complaint. He watched the video and didn't even try to hide his frustration. This is turning into a harassment case, he said. I didn't tell him I'd already anticipated this. I'd backed everything up. Uploaded to multiple cloud accounts. Sent copies to the city attorney, the code enforcement officer, and even a local reporter I knew from college who now ran a podcast on suburban corruption. When the election date was announced, the HOA tried to delay it with a procedural challenge. Halloran shut them down in court within 48 hours. Denise showed up to the hearing in a blue pantsuit and tried to argue that the signatures had been coerced through misinformation. She had no lawyer, just her clipboard. The judge wasn't impressed. Now the vote was set for the following Saturday. Open ballot, community center, and I had one last card to play. The night before the vote, I printed flyers. Not just any flyers, full-color, double-sided. On one side, screenshots of Denise's admission to seizing trash cans. On the reverse, the chart of every fine issued in the last 6 months, cross-referenced with voter attendance records from HOA meetings. The pattern was unmistakable. I placed them in every newspaper box before dawn. By noon, the neighborhood was buzzing. People stopped me on the sidewalk. Some shook my hand. Others gave me nods of approval. A few just said, "About damn time." Saturday morning, the line to vote wrapped around the community center. I stood at the back, sipping coffee, watching it all unfold. Denise arrived late. She tried to rally her loyalists near the entrance, but no one wanted to be seen next to her. The results were posted at noon. 82% voted to remove the current board. Unanimously, the replacement candidates nominated from among the petitioners were approved. I didn't run for a seat. I had no interest in managing hedge height disputes or parking complaints, but I accepted when they asked me to head the oversight committee, because if there's one thing I learned from all this, power unchecked becomes a disease. And the best cure is a neighbor with a good memory and better receipts. 3 weeks after the vote, the neighborhood looked different. Not physically, houses still stood in neat rows, lawns still buzzed with the occasional mower, but something in the air had shifted. People nodded to each other more. Kids lingered at the park longer. It was like the whole place had taken a deep breath for the first time in years. But I wasn't relaxing just yet. The new board, 5 homeowners who'd never imagined they'd be running anything more complicated than a block party, were eager, but they were green. And Denise, she hadn't gone quietly. She was still in her house, still watching, still walking her dog twice a day like she owned the sidewalks. Every time I saw her, she kept her eyes locked ahead like she was daring me to say something. I didn't, not yet. Then on a gray Thursday morning, I got a call from Officer Patel. "Travis," he said, "you got a minute? Thought you'd want to see something." He didn't explain further, just told me to meet him at the precinct. When I arrived, he led me back through the maze of hallways to a small interview room. There was another officer, already seated, Detective Langford, who I'd seen once before when a neighbor's car got broken into 2 years ago. She didn't look like the type to waste time. Langford slid a folder across the table. "We've been looking into your HOA," she said. "Started with the property seizure complaints, the trash cans, the garden decorations, the porch furniture." "Right," I said. "They'd confiscate things and then claim they were enforcing code." She nodded. "Except they weren't just taking things, they were reselling them." That landed like a punch to the ribs. "Wait, what?" We traced several items listed on online resale platforms, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, even auction sites. The usernames were all linked to the same IP address. Belonged to a private server owned by a limited liability company based in Jefferson City. Langford opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots, dozens of listings, a metal bench with a floral pattern, a set of trash cans, a garden gnome with a chipped hat. "Recognize any of these?" "That's Mr. Lie's gnome," I said, pointing without hesitation. "And those trash cans, those are mine. That scuff mark on the lid, that's from where my daughter backed into it with her trike." Langford tapped a pen against the table. "The LLC is registered to a man named Warren Templeton, Denise's husband." "Correct. We believe he was operating the resale side of the operation while Denise coordinated the seizures through the HOA board. They used violations as pretext, declared property non-compliant, then removed it for disposal. But instead of disposing of anything, they cleaned it up and sold it off, pocketed the money." I leaned back in the chair, the pieces clicking into place faster than I could process them. "How long's this been going on?" "Best guess. Over 18 months. We've only scratched the surface." Langford flipped to a page deeper in the folder. It was a spreadsheet, rows and rows of transactions. Dates, buyer names, item descriptions, dollar amounts. Some went for as little as $10. Others, like a full patio set, cleared over 400. "Any idea how much total?" "Preliminary count is just over 16,000, but we think it's more." I ran a hand down my face. "This is theft, fraud, maybe even racketeering." Langford nodded. "And we're moving forward on it. We've already issued a subpoena for financial records tied to the HOA. If we can prove they used dues to fund any part of this operation, Warren and Denise won't be the only ones facing charges." I exhaled slowly. "So what do you need from me?" "Testimony. You've got video. You've got documentation, and you've got motive. If you're willing to go on record, we can build this into a criminal case." "I'm in." Langford stood up and offered me a form. "Good, because we're getting a warrant tomorrow morning." The next 24 hours moved fast, faster than I expected. Early the next day, I watched from my front window as 2 unmarked cars rolled up to Denise's house. Officers stepped out calmly, but with purpose. One of them knocked. Denise opened the door, still in her robe, holding a coffee mug. The conversation lasted less than a minute before she was escorted back inside, and another officer emerged carrying a box of electronics. Across the street, lawn mowers went silent. A man paused mid-car wash, curtains twitched. No one said anything, but you could feel the tension unraveling like a pulled thread. By noon, news vans had arrived. The local affiliate ran a breaking story by 5. Suburban HOA president and husband accused of theft and fraud, the headline read. The anchor's tone was appropriately outraged, and they flashed copies of the same listings Langford had shown me. They even showed a blurry still from the resale sites banner, where a patio umbrella clearly showed a faded neighborhood logo. The fallout was immediate. Residents flooded the new board with messages. Some wanted answers, others offered support, a few demanded refunds. The treasurer, a middle school teacher named Nalan, called me in a panic. "This is bigger than any of us thought," he said. "We've got a financial audit scheduled next week. The city's sending someone to help, but we need to know how deep this goes." "Start with the HOA's discretionary spending over the last 2 years," I said. "Look for payments to vendors that aren't local. Anything tied to Templeton Holdings or any construction company that doesn't have a business license." "How do you know all this?" "I used to clerk for a city councilman when I was in college. I watched a neighborhood in Kansas City collapse under almost the same scheme. Different names. Same playbook." That night, I pulled up every document I'd ever saved from the HOA's website, every meeting minute, every financial report. I flagged anything that didn't list a vendor address, anything paid in cash, anything with ambiguous line items like beautification or compliance enforcement. By the time I was done, I had a list of 15 suspicious entries. Langford called the following morning. "You were right," she said. "We traced a payment for contractor services to a PayPal account under a fake name. That account led us to a shared bank account in both Warren and Denise's names. Tell me you're charging them." As of this morning, both are in custody, bail hearings being scheduled. "We're pushing for no release. You think they'll try to run?" "Denise, no, she's too proud. But Warren's already tried to withdraw funds from a joint account flagged in the investigation. He knew the walls were closing in." The next few days brought a flurry of activity. The new board issued a freeze on all HOA fines, pending a full review. Residents were encouraged to submit claims for any property taken in the last 2 years. The city attorney's office opened a civil investigation into the HOA's incorporation status, citing possible dissolution if negligence was proven. And then, the biggest surprise of all, a class action suit was filed by 28 homeowners. I wasn't listed as a plaintiff. I didn't need to be. I was helping them build the case. Depositions began the week after. Langford called me after the first round. "Denise's lawyer is pushing for a plea deal," she said. "Wants to avoid jail time in exchange for restitution and full disclosure of the scheme's timeline." "Is that on the table?" "Not unless she turns over every record, every contact, and every cent, and even then, the DA's leaning toward prosecution." I didn't celebrate, not yet. But when I walked outside that evening and saw the neighborhood kids setting up folding chairs on the sidewalk planning some kind of impromptu movie night, I realized something had shifted again. And this time, it wasn't just relief. It was ownership. This place belonged to us now, the people who actually lived here, who cared about it. And no clipboard tyrant was going to change that again. So I pulled a cooler out of the garage, wheeled it to the curb, and cracked a root beer. I had earned that much. The courtroom was colder than I expected, air conditioning dialed high enough to keep nerves sharp and sweat minimal. It didn't help that the fluorescent lights were brutal, the kind that turned everyone the color of copier paper. But none of that mattered, not with Denise sitting at the defense table, wearing a charcoal gray blazer 2 sizes too tight, and pretending she didn't see me when I walked past to take the witness stand. The prosecution, a wiry assistant district attorney named Keegan, stood beside the judge's bench flipping through notes. He was efficient, not theatrical. No grand gestures or showboating, just precision. That worried Denise's attorney enough that he kept fidgeting with his tie, like it had suddenly become sentient. "State your name for the record," Keegan began. "Travis Fenmore, and your relationship to the defendant. She was the president of my homeowners association." Was, She was removed by a neighborhood vote after evidence of misconduct surfaced. Keegan nodded. Let's talk about that evidence. You submitted video footage to the city attorney's office. Can you describe what was depicted? Denise Templeton standing in her driveway, explaining that my trash cans were no longer mine because I left them out past 10 a.m. On a Monday. Did she have legal authority to seize your property? No, the trash cans are city-issued and city-owned. I confirmed that with municipal sanitation. And were the trash cans ever returned to you? No. They were later discovered listed for sale online, under an account linked to her husband. Keegan turned slightly toward the jury. Did you give consent for your property to be disposed of or sold? Absolutely not. He walked back to the table, picked up a thin binder and held it up. This ledger was recovered during a search of the Templetons' home. It includes handwritten entries corresponding to item descriptions and prices. Does this match what you found online? He laid the binder in front of me. I scanned the page. Yes, that's my trash cans. And that's the same sale date listed on the Facebook Marketplace screenshot. Thank you. One more question, Mr. Fenmore. In your opinion, was this an isolated incident or part of a larger pattern? There were dozens of other homeowners affected. I collected statements from 28 of them. Items were taken after vague or fabricated violations. Many of those items matched listings on resale platforms run by the Templetons. Keegan nodded once and turned to the judge. No further questions. Denise's attorney stood slowly, as if buying time just by moving slower. He approached with a rehearsed calm. Mr. Fenmore, you also placed garbage into several mailboxes, correct? That's right. Would you agree that's an act of retaliation? I'd agree it was a symbolic protest against theft and abuse of authority. But you did it knowing it would cause distress. I did it knowing it would draw attention to a problem no one else wanted to acknowledge. There was a pause, but I didn't budge. He looked at his notes again, then back at me. So you see yourself as some kind of vigilante. I see myself as someone who got tired of being bullied. He returned to his table without another word. Denise never looked up. The trial lasted 4 days. Each day brought more witnesses. A retired postal worker who confirmed the volume of complaint letters spiked under Denise's presidency. A former board member who testified that Denise held closed-door meetings that excluded the rest of the board when discussing compliance strategy. A tech contractor who traced the IP addresses of the resale listings directly back to the Templetons' home network. But the day that sealed it came when the HOA's former treasurer, Nolan, was called to the stand. He walked in clutching a folder, shoulders hunched like he hadn't slept in a week. When Keegan asked him what he'd brought, he opened the folder and pulled out 2 flash drives. These are backups, he said. I made them when I noticed discrepancies in the expense reports. Discrepancies? Money was being moved into a maintenance fund that never funded anything. No invoices, no receipts, just digital transfers. Do you know where the funds went? He nodded. Into a checking account registered to a company called Oak Crescent Solutions. That company is owned by Warren Templeton. Keegan raised an eyebrow. And when did you discover this? 2 months before the vote to remove the board. I confronted Denise. She told me it was a temporary holding account for emergency repairs. Were any emergency repairs made? Not that I could verify. But I did find multiple withdrawals from that account, payments to a landscaping company that doesn't exist, and cash withdrawals from an ATM near a casino in Jefferson City. That was the moment everyone in the courtroom leaned forward. By the end of the day, the judge had denied bail for Warren and ordered a freeze on all accounts associated with the HOA under his and Denise's management. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours, guilty, on all counts. The charges: wire fraud, embezzlement, theft of city property, and unlawful resale of stolen goods. The final tally of damages came to just over $33,000, enough to classify the case as a felony under state law. Sentencing was scheduled for the following month. Denise didn't cry, she didn't shout. She just sat there, hands folded in front of her, staring straight ahead like she was still chairing a meeting no one else could see. That night, I came home to find my trash cans sitting neatly beside my garage, the original ones. City sanitation had recovered them from a storage container used by Oak Crescent Solutions, along with several other items labeled with house numbers from our neighborhood. 2 weeks later, the city issued a formal dissolution notice for the HOA. The new board had voted unanimously to disband it and revert control of all community upkeep to the municipality. The city agreed, citing the HOA's financial misconduct and procedural violations. A few people were nervous about losing the oversight. But a town hall meeting with the city's public works department eased their fears. Maintenance would continue. Trash pickup would stay the same. The park would remain open and funded. The only thing gone was the layer of intimidation that had hovered over everything like a thundercloud. I spent that weekend repainting my garage door not because I had to, but because I finally felt like doing something for myself, not in defiance of someone else's rules. My daughter helped, splattering more paint on herself than the siding. We laughed until our arms got sore. The mailbox was replaced too. A neighbor down the street who worked in metal fabrication crafted a new one from scratch, said it was a gift, no HOA approval required. On Sunday, the neighborhood threw a block party. The first in years, no clipboard, no sign in sheets. Just folding tables, a bounce house, and half a dozen lawn chairs arranged in a lopsided circle. Someone brought a speaker. Someone else brought ribs. I stood next to Mr. Lai, watching the kids race around with popsicles. "Never thought I'd see this street like this again," he said. "Me neither." He glanced over at his yard where a new set of garden gnomes stood proudly, this time anchored with cement bases. "Think they'll come back?" he asked. "Denise, maybe, but she won't be running anything," he nodded. "Good." The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the pavement. Someone lit a citronella candle, and for the first time in a long time it felt like summer wasn't just a date on the calendar. It was peace, earned and scraped for sure, but real. And all because someone decided it was time to stop letting the HOA write the rules in pencil while wielding the eraser like a sword. I never wanted to be the guy who took on the system. But when the system steals your trash cans and sells them on Facebook, you stop asking for permission and start demanding answers. Turns out, that's all it takes to turn a neighborhood around.